This year, experience the NHL playoffs your way. Want to watch a single? Do or die Game 7, a full week of heavy-hitting back-and-forth series. Then check out Sling's 1, 3, and 7-day passes. Watch the Chase for the Cup on ESPN and TNT, starting as low as $4.99. No long-term contracts or overpaying. Just live hockey at home or when you want it. Sling lets you do that. Visit sling.com to learn more.
I'm here on the job site with Dale, who's a framing contractor.
Hey, good morning.
Dale traded up to Geico Commercial Auto Insurance for all his business vehicles. We're here where he needs us most.
Yep, they sure are.
We make it easy for him to save on all his insurance needs, all in one place, with coverage that fits his business and bottom line. Oh, I shouldn't have looked down.
It's all right.
We're so far up here.
Look at me. Take a deep breath.
No, I'm good. So good.
Get a commercial auto insurance quote today at geico.com and see how much you could save. It feels good to Geico.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. The playoffs are here, folks. Meaningless game last night, not even worth talking about. Wouldn't have helped the Utah Mammoth, didn't hurt the Utah Mammoth. They knew exactly who they were going to play, when they were going to play. It is the Las Vegas Golden Knights. And joining us now from the practice facility down at Southtown, Jesus himself, Jay Stevens. Jay, how you doing?
I'm doing really well. The guys came out to practice. They thought they weren't going to skate today, but a bunch of the guys wanted to get out and work on some fine details of the game. So it's another great day at the practice facility.
Now, these guys, like your youngsters out there, they can say they're ready for it, that they're anticipating what playoff hockey is like. But I have a sneaking suspicion if you haven't lived through it, it's still going to take you a little bit by surprise, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things I was just talking to Ian Cole about. And he's just like, we try to get them ready. You can tell them what it's going to be like. But until they're actually in there and experiencing it for the first time, there's just no way to tell somebody how to prepare for it. And this was the goal, right? They wanted to be in playoffs this year. They wanted to get the experience of being in playoffs. But don't fool yourselves. Just because making playoffs was the goal, these guys don't want to just be here, collect their gift bag, and go home. They want to actually win some games, win a series, get dirty, fight for pucks on the boards, and do all those fun things that playoffs are known for. Just real tough, physical, shutdown hockey.
So we had a Gracie who works with America First Credit Union. She was in studio, and she's 23, 24. She's going to give birth to her first child here in just a few weeks. And she was like, hey, you got any advice? I'm like, you know what? Everybody gives you advice. Everybody will tell you you're not going to sleep. It's going to be miserable for the first few weeks. But you know what? I can say this, and you still are like, oh, yeah, okay, we'll be ready. You're never ready. You're just never ready. Like when you have that kid, you can say you're ready, but you're not. And I think the same thing applies a bit here for the Utah Mammoth, because that level of physicality, I've got to imagine, is just through the roof. And when you look at a team that's young like the Mammoth, do you give them a little bit of grace in game one as they kind of adjust to playing on the road against a very veteran-laden team like Las Vegas?
You're going to have to. They're going into a sold-out building that puts on an amazing show, and you're going into enemy territory. Although I do think there's going to be, I'm going to guess 15 to 20% Utah fans in the building, because a lot of people are traveling down there. But yeah, you're going into a really intense situation. You've never been in it before. And it reminds me, I just interviewed a couple of the guys that just turned pro and got pulled up to our Tucson Roadrunners, the Mammoth's AAA team. And I was asking them, like, what's the difference between playing in college and playing pro in your first 3 games pro? And it's always, these guys are smarter, they're more physical, and it's a much harder game, and they're more patient. And that's exactly what happens. That's going to be the same answer you get from these new NHL players playing in the first playoff series. Even if they've been in the NHL for 4 or 5 years, like Keller, once you get to the playoffs, it's different. And, Vegas is a very veteran, they have a veteran pedigree of winning championships, and they know what they're doing in the playoffs. And a guy like Mark Stone's definitely going to try and teach the young Mammoth a lesson right from the drop of the puck. So you're going to be looking for our senior leaders on the Utah Mammoth to stick up for the guys and get these young guys through at least the first few shifts of the first period. After that, these are pros. They're going to know what to do, and hopefully you see them play like they've been playing most of the season.
Do you tighten up the rotations if you're Coach Tierney, or do you still stick with a pretty heavy rotation and keep those minutes down?
Your fourth line barely sees the ice during the playoffs.
Gotcha.
And just depending on what you do with your fourth line, the last 2 games we saw a management thing. You saw guys, their minutes doubled from the first 2 periods of the third period. You saw almost extensively it would go line 1, line 4, line 2, line 4. But you're not going to see a lot of line 4. You're going to see a lot of line 1 and line 2 in the playoffs.
Jay Stevens joining us right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Mammoth and Golden Knights coming up on Sunday. So the question with the Golden Knights all season has been just miserable goaltending. But they have gone, 7-0-1 over their last 8 since the coaching change. Has that goaltending improved, or is it more that the level of competition wasn't really particularly great for the Vegas Golden Knights down the stretch?
It wasn't a change. I think 2 things happened at the same time. They made a coaching change, but they also got Carter Hart back from injury, who was supposed to be their young, phenomenal goaltender. And he is. He's a phenomenal goaltender, and he really stabilized them on the back end. They had some real pressure, some issues going on with Aiden Hill. A little meme that went around showing the guy's not high-fiving Hill as he was coming off the ice. So just some really weird things going on in Vegas until about 10 games ago. They get Carter Hart back. He stabilized the team. He's 92, almost a 93% average right now in the last 7 games. So bad for the Mammoth, unfortunately, is to get their goalie. But I think Carter Hart's stabilized, and you're going to see the Carter Hart vet. One of those guys has to steal the game.
Trying to keep our connection going with Jay Stevens right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jay's down in the practice facility for the Utah Mammoth, a beautiful facility, getting ready for playoff hockey as the Mammoth head south to go and take on the Las Vegas Golden Knights. You mentioned some names there for Las Vegas, and certainly when you think about this team, you look at the fact, you got Eichel, you got Marner, Mark Stone. These guys are all tremendous hockey players, for the most part, very experienced. What do you see out of that offensive group that could cause problems for the Mammoth in this series?
Jack Eichel is a real threat. I mean, he's a veteran. He's won a cup with Vegas. Mark Stone at one point was one of the best players. Like 3 years ago, he was one of the most dominant players in the NHL, especially when it came to playoffs. He's just a different animal during playoffs. And then we can't forget Mitch Marner and everything that he accomplished while he was in Toronto. And he's got a chip on his shoulder and something to prove to everybody, not just the fans in Vegas where they picked him up, not the fans who were ruthless about him his whole career, but maybe to himself, to his family, to his agent. He's going to come out and try to be a championship player. And then their line, too, is just phenomenal, too. They've got some young kids out there, Barbashev and Brett Howden. I mean, they're really balanced out with some real threats. But when you look at that first line, that's the type of line you want. Big, physical guys, lots of skill, and those are the type of guys that get you through these graphs.
Was Utah in on the Marner sweepstakes? I know we brought up his name a lot last year in the offseason. Did those have some validity to it?
I honestly don't think there was validity to the Hawks. I don't think there's any validity to Utah going after Marner, just because that's or the type of contract the Utah Mammoth are looking for. To bring that, they'd have to give him a ton of money.
Hey, hold on a second there. We're going to connect on the phone. The internet connection isn't working great, so we're going to try to reconnect with Jay Stevens, who's down in Southtown at the Utah Mammoth practice facility. Mammoth and the Golden Knights coming up on Sunday. Game starts at 7 o'clock. We'll start our pregame show coming up at 5 o'clock. So we'll have complete coverage of the Mammoth and the Golden Knights, myself and Jay Stevens. We'll have coverage of that one leading into the Mammoth official pregame show. And then as soon as that thing goes final, Jay and I will connect again and give you a little bit of a postgame wrap-up as well. So, look, the Mammoth go into the playoffs. We got you covered. Myself and Jay Stevens, from top to bottom, everything you need to know to prepare for this series, everything you need to know after the game, why it went down the way that it did. I tell you what, we're going to blow this thing up for you right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone, your official home of the Utah Mammoth, as Mike Folta and the crew ready to bring you all the play-by-play action. So, again, when you look at starting on the road, and this is one of the things I want to talk to Jay about, but before I believe we got him back, hey, talk a little bit about Mitch Marner. I know his name came up, and we lost you right when you were talking about whether or not Utah expressed some interest in him during last offseason, because he's done such a tremendous job for Vegas this year.
Yeah, Marner's a phenomenal player, one of the top players in the league. But what he would have cost Utah, both financially and with draft picks and with prospects, and maybe even a veteran player off the current roster, that didn't make sense last year for Utah to even really look at that. I think it just didn't fit the long term, when they talk about the window of when they plan on winning a championship. If they would have locked Marner in, who knows what kind of player he'd be in 3 or 4 years, and you would have had to pay him, $10 million to come take up that spot in your roster and in your salary cap. So I just didn't see that one making sense, just like I don't see it making sense for them to go after Austin Matthews. So I just think they want to keep this team right where it's at. I think in 2 or 3 years, you will see them make a move where they give up a couple prospects or draft picks to bring in that piece, whatever piece it is that's missing as they're starting to win playoff series and looking like a real cup contender. But the Marner thing just didn't make sense last year, so I didn't put a lot of value in it.
How much do you what's the level of excitement you have in just hoping that the Mammoth win their first round? Obviously, you never wanted them to play Colorado, so it was important to clinch that wild card 1 spot. But when it was looking like it was either going to be Edmonton or Las Vegas, people got fired up at the thought that it was Vegas over Edmonton. Is the gap between those two in terms of the Mammoth being able to win and go to the next round, is it significantly higher with Vegas as opposed to Edmonton?
Yeah, 100%. I think Utah's had a really good, series the last 2 years against Vegas, which you can't say that about Edmonton at all. They finally beat Edmonton 1 time in overtime just recently, which gave you hope as a Mammoth fan that they could beat Edmonton. But to come into Vegas, who they beat 2 out of the 3 times they played this year, Veggie's at a 94% save average and giving up less than 2 goals a game against Vegas. Seems like he really enjoys playing Vegas, and he likes playing in that building. And then, that kind of does open it up. Let Anaheim and Edmonton go beat each other up for a while. And if Utah can advance, I don't know which one of those teams is going to come out of that other series. It really is, each team's hot at different nights. So Utah definitely has had a lot better success against Vegas. They've got a shutout this year against Vegas. They got a shutout last year against Vegas. So it's just, if you were going to draw it up on a map at the beginning of the year, it looked like you would have wanted to play Anaheim. But the way they're playing right now, I don't think anybody wants to run into Anaheim. Edmonton's always good. They're a deep threat. They're really scary. They've been in the Stanley Cup Championship the last 2 years in a row. But yeah, if you're going to pick it, Vegas, even though they're the Pacific Division champions, I think that's the matchup Utah likes. And I really do think Utah knows how to beat this team.
So let's go back to that game back in March. Utah wins that game 4-0. I believe they scored 3 goals on Aiden Hill on the first 3 shots and made his life miserable. Do you think that part of the tipping point that got Bruce Cassidy his job, or that lost his job for him?
This year, experience the NHL playoffs your way. Want to watch a single, do or die Game 7, a full week of heavy-hitting back-and-forth series? Then check out Sling's 1, 3, and 7-day passes. Watch the chase for the cup on ESPN and TNT, starting as low as $4.99. No long-term contracts or overpaying. Just live hockey at home or when you want it. Sling lets you do that. Visit sling.com to learn more.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F-words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, Like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic.
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.
Yeah, I think so. And there was a lot of other stuff going on, and Vegas I've just never seen a team that operates like Vegas.
Yeah.
They fire their coaches right away, and they notoriously got rid of Marc-Andre Fleury just so quickly. And they've done that with several players, and Marsh's show and other players. There's no loyalty there. It's complete business transaction, and they pride themselves. I've heard their GM even talk about, like, when a player or a coach looks like they might not be performing, and maybe you think they're on their downward trend, get rid of them right then. Don't wait till they're too far down to make a trade, or too far down that they've cost you too many wins during the season. So I think there was a lot of things going on, but that game definitely didn't help Aiden Hill's career. But Aiden Hill was originally an Arizona Coyote, so you wonder if they kind of had, if a lot of the Mammoth kind of had his number coming out, practicing with him for so long. But just crazy to see them change coaches like that. 8 games out, and to bring in a guy like Torts, who's notoriously, he's fun for sound bites. He's rough to play for, but a lot of players seem to really enjoy playing for him during the Olympics, and that's what brought his value up. So, and it seems to be working. Good goaltending and good coaching got him, right into the top spot of the playoffs.
Special teams looks to be somewhat of a fascinating thing here, because you've got Vegas, who obviously ranks 7th in penalty kills this year. Utah ranked 19 in power play, but they've been much better over the last few weeks of the season. How do you see this playing out?
Utah's power play is finally getting to exactly where they've been working on all year. And as frustrating as it has been, and for fans to be calling it out all year, and fans online wanted Bear fired, or whoever's running the power play to be fired, you're seeing the peak of the power play. And whatever it took to get to there were something like 48% on power plays in the last 10 games of the season, and they're scoring a power play goal in every game. That's what's going to win you a playoff series or a playoff game. It comes down to special teams. You started to see the penalty kill suffer just a little bit, so expect to see more discipline. They're going to try and stay out of the box. They're on the other side working on the PK right now, is what they're on the ice working on. So I expect to see the PK pick up. But the power play is finally, if you could get one power play goal a game like they have in the last, I think 8 of the last 10 games, then you're going to be all right in the playoffs. You just have to shut the other team down. Vegas is, they know what they're doing too, but I'm going to have to give the edge to the current version of the Utah power play.
What are the other key matchups you're seeing in this series? The individual matchups that really stand out at you and say, like, okay, that's something that the Mammoth really have to zero in on?
Well, let's start with goaltending. It's got to start between between Veggie and Carter Hart. And I think the fans are going to be hard on Carter Hart here. You're going to hear a lot of chanting against him. This is his first playoff series. He took a couple years off of hockey. I think he was out of hockey for 18 months. So you're looking at a kid coming in with a lot of weight on his shoulders. Veggie has a lot of weight too, but I think the nerves and the weight of the games are going to be more on Carter Hart. So I think that you got to see that kind of tilt his way. But then when you get down to which line is going to be against which line, playoffs are going to be line 1 versus line 1, and your line 2, your second line center is going to have to really maybe play against Vegas's line 1. It depends on your line changes. Vegas gets last line changes at home for the first 2 games. So expect to see Vegas has a really good shutdown. Actually, in their third line center, Thomas Hertl, you might see him quite a bit out there against the Schmaltz-Keller line. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Hertl's really good at being a shutdown forward, and one of the reasons he was so successful in all those years in San Jose. But you really got to look at the first 2 lines. And the first line for Utah currently is Keller, Schmaltz, and Krause. And that matches up against Stone, Eichel, and Marner. For as much as they're out there, you're going to see Stone really just try to manhandle the Utah forwards anytime he can. And when he comes back into especially in the defensive zone, look for him to throw his body weight around on those Utah forwards. And it's just going to be interesting to see how the Utah forwards can handle it. They're smaller. We know that Clayton Keller and Schmaltz and Yamamoto and Cooley, Gunther, Peterka, I mean, these are all small guys going up against some pretty big boys. So line by line, you see more skill on the Utah side, but you see bigger, more experienced guys on the Vegas side. So it just comes down to is the youth and the small amount of veteran leadership Utah has, is that going to be able to outmatch that Vegas lineup, or is it just going to be that championship pedigree that Vegas is coming in? Is that going to be the dominant factor? So you're going to hope Utah uses their speed and their tenacity and their, hopefully they go in with a little bit of being naive about how physical it is and they just ignore it and score lots of goals. But that's basically what it comes down to. And I'd like to give the edge to, it kind of matches up perfectly. 2 lines are better for Utah, 2 lines are better for Vegas.
So you mentioned, and again, if people are still learning about hockey, there is that home court or home ice advantage where you get a sub last. How much of an advantage really is that for a home team?
It's funny because before this season, I always thought home ice was everything. You get to be in your own bed. You get to be, with your team in your locker room. And, the visiting locker rooms for the NHL aren't bad, but they're not as good as your home locker room. And I always thought that meant the world. And then I started pulling up stats over the last 15, 20 years. And home team wins 52% of the games in playoffs and 54% during the regular season. So, you would think your home crowd, and I think definitely for Utah, having some home games, I think they're going to be better at home just because of what the overwhelming emotion and the intensity that this Utah fan that already made almost all of last year feel like a playoff experience, just the intensity that they brought every game. To see that in person, for real life, when it really matters in the NHL playoffs at the Delta Center, I think that's definitely going to tilt Utah's way. So they got to go out there to Vegas. They got to steal one. You can go 1-1 on the road. That's your goal. And then come home and take care of business.
I was reading a story before I let you go, but I want to get your thoughts on this as a goaltender, that for the first time since 1994, so over 30 years, the average save rate in the NHL is under 90. I think it was like 89.4, something like that. What do you attribute that to? Is the quality of goaltending gone down, or is the rules allowing more scoring? What would you think is the genesis behind that?
It's really funny. I quoted that same article in my podcast yesterday with Michael Hrabel, one of the prospects for Utah. Their 6'7" goaltender that just signed pro. We talked about it for a little bit, and what it comes down to is 10, 12 years ago, Jonathan Quick from the LA Kings had those 2 Stanley Cup runs where he completely revolutionized and brought in what we call the RVH, the reverse vertical horizontal, where goalies were hugging the post different than they had before. And you're seeing a lot of goals and a lot of weird shot angles. They're coming off, they're shooting from the goal line. They're shooting from just these weird angles because they're catching goaltenders off guard and cheating a little bit. And it worked so well for Jonathan Quick, but then the forwards figured it out. And the goaltending is still phenomenal. And it's crazy how many you're seeing a lot more Finns, Swedes, and Czech goalies than you are Canadian goalies, which has, never happened. But the training for goaltenders is still phenomenal, and they're super, super good athletes. But the forwards have figured out over the last 3 years where to shoot. You're not seeing them go for corners every time. They're going for 14 inches off the ice right, like they shoot for the outside of the pad, right kind of in the middle of the league. So when the goalie goes down in the butterfly, which most NHL goalies do every shot, that puck is put right above their pad and right below their glove. And I watch these guys shoot all day long here at Mammoth Ice, and that's where they're shooting shots. And the minute somebody goes down to RVH, they shoot right for the head, and that typically gets you a goal. So it's crazy because if you were a 92 or a 93% save average at the end of your one NHL season, the odds were pretty good that you were going to get released or you're going to be the backup the next year.
Wow. That's really putting it in perspective right there. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's been unreal. And to see, I mean, you're seeing some of these amazing goaltenders. And what happened in Montreal, you had Montembeault come through. Who's a phenomenal goaltender, tall kid, and he had like a 90% save average. And they're like, well, that's not good enough. So they put in their other goalie, and Dobas, and he's like 90% save average. And these are two phenomenal goaltenders, but I think coaches are still expecting to see better numbers and a higher save percentage. The same thing's happening in Calgary. They got two goalies that are both at about 90, 91%, and they're still letting them battle it out. Like, you don't have a clear starter based on those numbers. Wow. And it's just, I've never seen anything like it since goaltending revolutionized about, it was probably 15, 20 years ago when they really started getting better at being in the butterfly and being able to move. So, yeah, it's pretty weird to see the numbers go down because I think the goalies are getting better.
Well, Jay, appreciate it, man. You and I are going to chat a little bit on Sunday leading up to the game and immediately following, but I'm fired up, dude. Playoff hockey, let's go. Let's go. I cannot tell you how excited I am for this.
Same for me, and I'm looking forward to talking with you about it and getting ready for these playoff games.
Let's do it. Jay, good luck and great coverage going down there at Southtown. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This year, experience the NHL playoffs your way. Want to watch a single, do or die Game 7, a full week of heavy-hitting back-and-forth series? Then check out Sling's 1, 3, and 7-day passes. Watch the Chase for the Cup on ESPN and TNT, starting as low as $4.99. No long-term contracts or overpaying. Just live hockey at home or when you want it. Sling lets you do that. Visit sling.com to learn more.
Quality proteins aren't just for special occasions. With Omaha Steaks, you get unbeatable flavor and value delivered right to your door. They have an unmatched selection of perfectly portioned proteins, including USDA-certified tender steaks, burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, and more. All flash frozen at their moment of peak quality. Then quickly delivered to your door in a dependable cooler. So a great dinner is just minutes away. From Taco Tuesday to a weekend feast. Omaha Steaks practically invented meat delivery, and they've been perfecting the art of premium proteins for over 100 years. With their 100% satisfaction guarantee, you can order with complete confidence. Taste the Omaha Steaks difference, a better, more convenient way to buy proteins. Start getting flavorful proteins delivered today. Visit omahasteaks.com and get $35 off with promo code AUDIO at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, code AUDIO. Terms apply. See site for details.